gentlemen, mammals and rats, dogs and cats, to the latest edition of Woke Bros. Of course, I'm Big Waz. Joining me as always, my brother, the handsome Nando Vila, and of course, the indomitable Michael Jabal Brooks. What's up, fellas?
What's up?
How's it going?
All right, so now on today's show, of course, we're going to get into the global pandemic and the economic recession that's just decimating our country, China's, Italy, all over Europe, Spain. Everybody's getting hit pretty damn hard now. We're going to sort of talk about the reverberations, what you can expect going forward. And then, of course, first, though, we want to address the every fake liberal zaddy in chief, Cuomo, Governor Cuomo of New York State. He just put out an abominable, unconscionable, disgusting, disgraceful budget. I think we were pretty early on this show, while everybody was going crazy about him, guys, because he was stringing together 3 or 4 sentences of, grammatically correct English, and he sounded like a human being. Like, people have this, they've been battered and bruised so long from what's going on with 45. They're like, wow, this Cuomo guy is so impressive and blah, 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 which is nonsense, of course. And then, he passes a budget recently. And then, it's one of those things where we didn't get into why on here. I feel like a lot of times we get a very inside baseball on here because we take for granted that everybody in America might know about Cuomo's record as governor of New York and the type of Democrat that he's been. And we never really got into the specifics. But, conveniently, the guy puts out a budget where he's slashing Medicaid funding in the middle of a global pandemic. Hospitals are being overrun. It's literally a medical emergency. It's dire straits in New York City specifically. And this guy is slashing Medicaid, dude. Nando, obviously you can start.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show how a lot of people process politics as a sort of entertainment TV show. I mean, you've all seen everyone freaking out because Andrew Cuomo goes on his brother Chris Cuomo's show and they toss each other a couple jokes about oh, call your mom, you call your mom, you asshole, and it's oh my God, this is the greatest television I've ever watched in my life. Let's make him president, the bar is just so low, and it just shows that everyone processes politics as some sort of entertainment. It's really sad and pathetic. I mean, you got to say, at least to his credit, he's understood how to seize the moment, and there's something to that. Biden is just in hiding, and they're tossing him up layups to criticize Trump. But he's like, you know what? I'm not going to criticize Trump for his response to the coronavirus. And it's okay, so then what are you going to do? You're just going to sit this one out? Being a shameless kind of attention seeker is a skill in and of itself, and it kind of helps in these times, or it's useful in these times to further your political career, and that's what Cuomo's doing. But yeah, I mean, no one should have any illusions that Cuomo is your friend, or that Cuomo is bae, or that Cuomo is going to do anything meaningful to help solve this crisis. I mean, like you said, slashing Medicaid in the middle of a pandemic just so he doesn't have to raise rich people's taxes 1-2% in the state budget. It's unconscionable. I mean, it's just the fact that he's now the liberal darling, and that people are seriously considering replacing Biden with him at the top of the ticket, which I don't discount at all. I think could actually totally happen. The Democrats could totally do that if they wanted to. It's pathetic.
I think it will happen. I've been calling it for a little bit, but I mean, even just his specific response to this crisis is not good. Newsom and Inslee actually were a little bit faster on kind of telling people you need to head indoors for a second. This guy was, and de Blasio, it should be acknowledged too. It's crazy how short the timeline is. It is not even a month ago that they were still kind of saying hey, look, if you feel fine, make sure to go get Broadway, go to the bars. we liked, all those pictures of like everybody hitting the bars and everything. Like, yeah, like it was, it's kind of fun to make fun of or whatever. But we actually forget that, for what it's worth, a lot of officials, including Cuomo, were sending out really mixed messages of like, hey, this is a pandemic, you got to be safe. And on the other hand, I mean, make sure to go to your great local New York restaurants. Andrew Cuomo has fought. He's been governor for a while now. His main goal has been to never raise taxes on rich people in any way, shape, or form in New York. He has not only sort of attacked policy, but really made it he has like a vendetta against anyone even remotely to the left in any substantive way. He did the thing, this, not to get like too New York baseball, but there was this like weird formation in the New York State Senate where these guys called themselves the Independent Democratic Caucus, and they were technically Democrats, but they caucus with Republicans and help Republicans control the Senate. And by all accounts, Cuomo loved that those guys were there, making sure that good legislation couldn't pass. And just even now, yeah, he's don't forget to tell people you love them. This guy is working to cut billions from Medicaid. He vetoed a rent relief bill, and also this is the other side of all this shit that we just we might complain about or see, like, hey, like, why are they shutting down that public hospital to build some trash condo? Well, that was always bad. And in this situation, the other side of it is that is the cause. And I saw a report today that, a doctor, obviously not speaking on the record, but I believe it, saying like, yeah, I lost my first 100% preventable patient today. We didn't have enough ventilators. Somebody died. They would have been fine otherwise. And so, not fine, but you know what I mean? They would have survived. And so that's Cuomo. And, I mean, and of course, nothing surprises me, but it is really just wildly disgusting to watch people. First of all, just how pathetic and sad they are that they're able to get satisfied this easily is just frankly embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's just like, yeah, you don't give a fuck,
No.
And it's so funny because you think about the red meat that gets like the people on the other side excited. It's like, yeah, we're gonna deport people. Yeah, we're gonna there's like we're gonna end abortions. There's like genuine things that you can say that for them would feel like gains for them, right? Like when the people on the other side throw their base red meat and people start salivating at the mouth. It's that kind of stuff. With people on our side, it's literally just speaking plain English.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is exciting. This is great. People go nuts for it. It's incredible, dude. Like, you don't actually have to do anything for anyone, for any group of constituents.
So
you just need to
liberals are
talk
kind of more crazy than conservative. Like,
yes.
I like getting into this kind of politics because ultimately, I think we can't just look at like people's little belief systems. And in general, I think we got to try as much as we can to not demonize huge swaths of the electorate to the extent as possible. But it is really interesting watching people who like are still totally formed by like Jon Stewart and George Bush era, be like, I care about facts and goals. And you look at the Republicans who are, yeah, of course they believe all sorts of lies and bullshit. And of course, a lot of their demands are just disgusting. But they are asking, they want some shit. And there is a huge swath of our media class and, mostly just suburban, comfortable people who are just like, he reminds me of that New York governor on West Wing. Yeah. And at first, him and Martin Sheen didn't like each other because they had different styles. But then they came together in partnership with a charter school to do school uniforms. And that was a great day for the country. It's fucking embarrassing. And it's crazy. Like, you're dealing with crazy people.
The thing about Cuomo too, that's hilarious, is that usually a Democrat's excuse for not passing anything remotely meaningful to help people is that, look at those big bad Republicans. We would have done it were it not for the Republicans. It's the Republicans' fault we couldn't pass it. Like in 2018, there was a huge new wave of Democrats in the New York State Assembly, and they passed all kinds of great legislation that then Cuomo vetoed, like hundreds of bills he vetoed. Like it wasn't the Republicans that were causing the obstructionism. It was him. He was the one stopping the meaningful legislation from going through. Like they don't even have that excuse in New York. And it's just him. It's him and his worldview and his ideology and his desire to crush anyone who tries to do anything to help people.
Yeah, and it's not even like Jerry Brown, who I've got plenty of problems with, but like people are talking about how in California, like, oh, he set aside a rainy day fund, so that's going to help protect us right now. Like, it's not even that like, oh, I'm going to be fiscally conservative and plan, which, by the way, again, not to like give Jerry Brown too much props because he did do a lot of things that were unnecessary. But A, he did actually raise taxes on wealthy people. And two, he did have that saving cut aside. Like there isn't really any analogs with Cuomo. He's just doing what he can for Westchester, basically. And,
yeah,
you know, that's
100%.
it.
If you live in Tarrytown, you love him, I bet.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though, right? To get back to the coalition and the party, the rank and file members of the party, I think what's borne out this cycle is that these people literally just want to have somebody in charge that they don't have to think about.
Yeah.
They don't want to be bothered at all in the political process. And so if somebody's a stopgap and I can just basically ignore everything that's happening in DC for 6 days out of the week, that's good enough. That's a win. It doesn't matter if government is functioning as it's meant to, meaning it's making people's lives better. We don't care about that because our lives are great. Who gives a damn about what's happening? I just don't want to have to think about it because that guy makes me anxious in my nice house and my great savings account and my great 401k that I'm really nervous about. Like, that's it. That's what politically motivates them. Anxiety about a guy's bedside manner. That's it. And it's annoying is what I'll call it, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's move right along.
That's literally it. There's nothing else.
From these people.
Yeah.
No, seriously, it's frustrating, and I hear you guys.
Yeah.
So let's move right along to sort of this hellhole that we're in, dude. It's officially gotten to. It's catastrophic in New York right now. There's no other way to describe it. They're putting hospital beds in Central Park, in the Jacob Javits Center. Like, it's dire right now. Obviously, we passed a stimulus package that was, when we covered it here at great length and detail, how beneficial it was to the corporations. And basically, they said, here's a little something, you little peons, to the normal people. And now I think we're seeing where the unemployment numbers are. We're going to have to revisit this in 2 or 3 months, if not a month, because people are just going to need more. And that's going to be another political battle.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to have to revisit it in the not too distant future. I do want to remind everybody, though, that like last week, 3 million people filed for unemployment. This week, 6 million. Now it's up to over 6 million. And Congress is on vacation. So just to like underline that, they just basically passed over 98% essentially just corporate theft bill, gave people a few little droplets to keep them going for a couple of weeks and then pieced. So that being said, this is one where I do have just some, I don't even want to say confidence, like there is going to be another package because it's going to be so bad and people want to get reelected. Like, it's not that complicated. But the next wave of that package is going to be, to me, it will be, I'm going to look out for, one, the stuff we need, like single-payer healthcare is not going to happen. And then even things like UBI, which can be problematic, like the way Andrew Yang would use it. But at the same time, especially in a situation like this where you just need to get people cash, like it's 100% the right call. Like, just give everybody that Rashida Tlaib $2,000 a month a card. But what I think you will see is the second arm of this corporate consolidation just now for people. So it will be like, okay, because a ton of people, at least 10 million, will lose their health insurance. Other people won't be able to afford their premiums. Okay, well, here's what we're going to do. Let's give you a subsidy that's specifically targeted for your premiums. It will be rebated to the insurance companies, and it will theoretically help you keep your garbage insurance. Okay, we're obviously not going to suspend rent or do anything like that, because that would actually empower people. But what we will do is set up some type of like direct deposit for your landlords. And incidentally, not only will that be bad for renters, it will actually favor big renting companies over, like a grandma who's renting her basement to like pay the bills, So I think like that's the second thing we got to look out for is like, there will be some bill, because nobody wants to go to the fall in like a complete total 25-30% unemployment, and so they have to do something. But I think the way they're on and the process is so bought that it will be, again, necessary because people need shit, but it will actually just be more handouts for Oscar.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this crisis and I just get a sense of vertigo. Like today, like this morning, I almost had a fucking full-on like anxiety attack. Like it's just looking. I saw that graph of the unemployment numbers, and it was like, it kind of goes up and down like that, and then 2008 it bleeps up a little bit, and then now it's just a vertical line at the end. Like off the charts, right? Like this is probably going to be the greatest economic crisis in the history of capitalism. Like I really just don't know how to like say it any other way. Like this is going to be bigger than the Great Depression. This is going to be bigger than like the two world wars. It's just because it's never happened where like the whole economy is just stopped. Like it's just stopped. Like no one can even do something. No one, and we don't even want anyone to do anything, right? Like we want it to stop. And like I just think of like, rent was due yesterday. Like how are people going to pay their rents? Like how are people going to pay their insurance premiums? Like all these things. Like I hear what you're saying, that like they're going to do something. Of course they're going to do something. I just don't think that even they have grasped the enormity of the situation by any stretch of the imagination. But like to like be kind of hopeful in a way, this kind of thing does present opportunities, right? Like, yeah. It seems bleak right now because Trump is in power and the Democrats are awful, and our nominee is Joe Biden, and he is, a corpse. And but I guess like the only thing we can hope for is that it's going to absolutely get worse in the short term. Like everything is going to get worse, way worse in the short term. Like here, 6 months from now, a year from now, even 2 years from now, it's going to get like shit's going to be really bad. The question is, can we seize the moment, seize the opportunity to fundamentally reshape everything, like literally everything, in a way that's transformational? I don't know, but like, it's really fucking scary to think about.
So Nando, it's hilarious to me because like, it's something that we're all conscious of, as far as like people like you and I and Michael. But Adam Serwer of The Atlantic wrote a really good piece today about just the opportunism of the Republicans. Like when you say seize the day, seize the moment, seize the opportunity, the people who are ostensibly on our side just aren't very good at doing things like this. Whereas the opposition, this is what they do. This is what they are singularly expert at. It's opportunism. Straight up and down. Like if we want to go back to 2008, where people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell were telling the president, for $800 billion, yo, Barry, how you gonna pay for that? How we gonna pay for it? How we gonna pay for it? What are we doing? How we gonna pay for it? Then when that thing finally got passed, these fools went back to their districts during pre-election time campaigning on a bill that they voted against, and was like, look at what we did for you in the middle of this crisis. These people are shameless. Have we heard a single thing when it comes to the $500 billion slush fund, when it comes to allegedly $200 billion to private to small businesses, has, and the untold, the obscene amount of money that are going to the largest of our overlords and corporations. Not a single have you heard, has the word Tea Party come up in the last 3 weeks one freaking time? It's like, it's obviously we're conscious of it, right? Like, obviously we know people like Lindsey Graham and people like McConnell want to go back to their district and be like, yo, look what we did. Look what we did for you guys. Go back to their states. Look what we did. And of course, this shit is bipartisan. The Democrats roll over as they already do. But it's like, folks you gotta stop and think for a moment. Like, the freaking Tea Party, this grassroots movement, even though we know it was just a whole contrivance by the Koch brothers, this grassroots movement sprung up. Literally, they said their singular issue was how much borrowing, and we're putting our children in debt so that we can give the losers a break, and these losers broke the economy and all of this stuff. I ain't heard a peep from the Tea Party, man. Where they at?
Well, of course not. But I mean, I think that's also though, like, the problem is though, is that with the Republicans, it's actually really easy to play that game because nobody actually gets rid of, like, they've tried, but at the end of the day, they do. Like, Mitch McConnell's the master of, he gets a lot of state funding for his state. He looks out for government funding of the people who are going to vote for him. And then the rest of the party is just dedicated to taking care of billionaires and extractive industries. The problem is, like, inside the Democratic Party is you have a whole bunch of people who really are kind of fine. The party leadership wants that to be the party 100%. They don't give they hate labor, and their whole deal with people of color and, other like LGBTQ or whatever is just like, hey, look, like,
those other people want to hang you. They literally want to lynch you.
And if you're a labor union, same principle. We're going to completely fuck you, but, I don't know, we'll give you some like NLRB appointment or some shit. So the Republicans are able to do that more easily. I think the thing about this crisis now, though, is like, it's going to affect a broader set of people because of how deep it is. I heard a crazy stat that during 2008, which was really bad, right? Like, that 5%, I think it only got up to 5% of college educated people were unemployed. Yeah. That's an incredible stat. And that's not going to be the case. Like, no. Of course, privileged people are going to be in a better position, but there's definitely going to be more people who are in like the top 10, 15% that are going to get bit out of this. And so, I mean, look,
2008 can't even compare to this. No, Mike. It can't.
2008, at the height of 2008, the economy was losing 800,000 jobs a month.
Right.
We lost 6 million in a week.
There's just no. There's no comparison.
There's no comparison. No. I agree. But I think what you'll do. Although I gotta say though, like, and I'm not even trying to be contrarian. My fucking weird feeling about this is like, especially seeing how they're playing it. And I think you're right that there is just some element that we are run by stupid people who don't understand, like, pandemics.
They got to get smacked in the face with it.
There's no doubt.
And you've kind of seen it with 45 and his fake somber tone now.
It's the same way Tom Perez was like, oh, the DNC is going to happen in August instead of June. Like, I can see a scenario where, especially because of how it's like geographically dispersed, it's like, okay, in 3 weeks, in a month, New York won't be as bad. And then Georgia will be really bad, but we'll get some stuff going. We'll get some of those jobs will be re-added relatively quickly. And in a way, like, what I'm saying right now is optimistic, but in a way that's its own nightmare scenario I want people to think about, that maybe it actually isn't as bad. It's really bad, but maybe it's not like a years long like depression, right? Maybe it is actually like July, August. It's like, oh shit, that's weird. Like, it's fucking awful, but some people are getting back on the rolls. Some things are opening back up. They just stole decades of power. Like those bills, those bail are going to change on every level, not just our socialist shit, but other important shit. Your small businesses, your like this whole thing has already been like a massive consolidation, even if it softens up. And I want people to actually remember that, because as much as it's fucked up, I actually feel like people are getting almost too in that. Like in a way, it's like it's already happened. Like we already had this major fucking loss with that bailout.
Yeah, that's I think like I mean this is why like I people get mad at me or whatever, but like that's why like I'm like hyper focused on the Democrats. You know, like this crisis has to be the end of all these people. Like we have to figure out to vanquish the most, like the Pelosi's, the Schumers, the Bidens, the Obamas, like all these people that are just completely incapable and unwilling to do anything for regular people. And that's because it's like that's our only impediment to like actual change, right? Like we're never gonna like take over the Republicans. You know, like,
no.
What are we going to do? You know, it's pointless to like get mad about them. You know what I mean? At this point, like, what are you going to do? Like, they're so far gone that but it's figuring out a way to take power in some way. And I don't have the answer to how to do that. Don't get me wrong.
Me neither. And again, the reason why I don't have the answer is that, you know, like I always say, like the freaking coalition, they seem to like these people. They seem to be comforted by the Pelosi's and, oh, she's a boss bitch. I'm like, is she?
She sucks.
Like,
her proposal for phase 4 or whatever is like a repeal of this SALT thing, which is basically just a tax rebate for rich homeowners in the suburbs, which is her preferred base.
Of course.
And it's not even like immediate. It's like next year.
No, and I think that's really like, and I could go in from both directions on this though, because I actually do think like, not even to get into the whole like who do we vote for argument, all that bullshit, but I would say like there is actually a difference between having a completely dead and discredited ideology just like stumbling around totally ineffectively and like literally dying with Joe Biden versus, and this is another thing that people who are Democrats need to get used to, a much smarter Republican Party, a much more strategic, much more like all these people have been patting themselves on the back about how brilliant they are fucking dumb. And people that have been dismissed as yokels have an infinitely better understanding of power and how shit works. And, you know, so like the energy, like the left is boxed out. The left has all the answers if you actually wanted to do the obvious things, because all of this is solvable if you just don't have like a fucking predator oligarchy. But, you know, the center is dead. Like they're out of their minds and they're stupid and they're narrow. And the right wing, I mean, look at what they just did in Hungary, man. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but they see their moment and they have a plan for it. And that is something to think about.
You know, I got into a quick little spat with this homie on Twitter. You know, he quote tweeted something Bernie said, which was obvious and true. And you know, he didn't dismiss what Bernie said. He said everything he said here is right, but he's like, I don't think Bernie has a good sense of marketing. Like these ideas need to be marketed, which to a certain extent, I agree. I agree. I think like, and I bring up this all the time, when Hillary Clinton brought up all them black moms from the kids that got shot by the cops on the DNC stage, I was like, that's a force. That's bad marketing. That's not slick. That's not cool. That's like you could have went about that somewhere. It's much smarter, way less clunkier. I get it.
You know,
there's a lot of times where, tell me.
Let's have the mother of someone who got shot and the mother of someone who shot them.
Like there just would have been a better way to roll that out. And I do think these ideas do need to be marketed, because Republicans, they get it. Like the wasteful spending. Like they know it's so easy to cut right through what they're trying to say. Like instinctively, that people, when they hear wasteful government spending, they know exactly what the Republicans are talking about. They're talking about black people in the ghetto on welfare. Period.
Yep.
Period. It's not military grift. It's not, these private contractors that get hundreds of millions of dollars from the government to make shit that don't work, that we never use. It's not them. It's those niggers in the ghetto, all right? And like they know how to market their message. But what I was telling this homie, it was just like, yo, I think a lot of times, and I used to be one of these progressive people who were like, we got the smart people. We got the people that are thinkers. We got the intellectuals. And it's like, our base is a lot more thick-headed than we give them credit for.
No, that's our problem.
And that's all I'll say for marketing these great ideas. The people who we would be marketing these ideas to, one, and I hate this, keep repeating myself, it's a broad coalition of a bunch of different people with it's legitimately a broad coalition, right? It's not as homogenous as the Republican Party. So it's a lot easier for them to get people on board with shit, right? That's one. And two, like I said, these people not as smart as y'all think. Y'all not as smart as y'all think. Y'all just straight up not, man. That's just what it is. It's like, I went to college, so I'm a genius. It's like, all right. Like, all right. I got nothing.
You look at voting patterns of like college educated people. Like, they're not better than, like the role of like a liberal intellectual is to basically absorb frustration and energy from the bottom and then turn it around and spit it back down at them, so that to keep them down and not actually empower them. That's the role of like a liberal intellectual. That's why one of the big problems of the Democratic Party is that they do have all these liberal intellectuals in their ranks. Like they're bad. They're just bad and they're wrong about everything.
Yeah.
Like
I love that you made that too, because I'm not even worried about like, I really do. Again, I keep saying, like, I just think we have to get as much as possible. You got to be honest, but honestly, across the board, from, definitely even some people who voted for Trump to certainly like, Jesus Christ, I see people, in our zone, you need to relax about older black people in South Carolina. But as far as leaders go, like, just take it real specific. And I'm not, everybody knows I'm not an apologist for Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson promotes actually more effectively than probably anybody some really toxic shit. If you were spending your like, why is there overall? If you watch Tucker Carlson, you'd have a way better understanding of what was actually happening inside the country than anything in the MSNBC lineup.
Oh,
because
100%.
They're watching, and then with all that terrible stuff that comes along with it. But if you're watching MSNBC, 99% of it is, Bernie's terrible and Russia and all this fucking bullshit. And Tucker will give you a segment on opioids. He'll give you on deindustrialization. He'll give you a segment.
Liberals get mad at people on the left for paying attention to Tucker Carlson. Like the liberal line on Tucker is like, ignore him, make sure, he is persona non grata, whatever, all that stuff.
He's dangerous.
He's dangerous.
Why would you ignore Tucker Carlson?
Exactly. Like the left kind of watches Tucker Carlson and they're like, wait a minute, this guy is a pretty effective communicator to a lot of the frustrations that a lot of people feel in this country. Like he's dangerous, but we're watching him and paying attention and taking him seriously for that reason. It's not because like anyone on the left is about to like take up Tucker Carlson's worldview in any way. They just recognize accurately that he's effective.
And also that the same criticisms of him, like he isn't Bill O'Reilly. He isn't Sean Hannity. This is a different era. There was a time where honestly, like whenever I get to do like a Sean Hannity segment on Majority Report or whatever, it's like, oh my God, I forgot how easy this is. Like just some fucking dumb blowhard from Long Island who loves Trump saying bullshit, and you make fun of them for saying and being and looking stupid. But the Tucker Carlson stuff, man, that is a lot more complicated, and you can't not what he's saying in terms of the substance of it, but how that argument's being made and what's being put together. And people,
well, he's fusing.
All they've got is ignore or condemn, and it doesn't.
No, it's stupid because he's doing something smart. He's doing the Bannon thing.
Right.
He's fusing the right wing paranoia with populist shit. Like, if you actually fuse the paranoia of all these non-white rural people or non-white coastal people are ruin everything that was great about this country, and so are the rich pricks. That's dangerous.
Well, Tucker Carlson is doing something that the populist right is doing all over the world, which is that they have a critique of capitalism. They're not going to like actually advocate for any of those, like an actual kind of reform or overthrow of the system, but they have a critique and it resonates with people, whereas the liberals do not have a critique of capitalism. They will never do it. And that's fundamentally at its core why Tucker Carlson is appealing to so many people, is because he fuses the sort of blood and soil racism, nationalism that a lot of people feel kind of in their bones on some level.
That's easy. That's natural.
With a critique of capitalism. And that's just a very effective combo for a huge swath of the population.
And the liberals are doing the opposite. Yeah.
They're doing the opposite.
I agree. Yeah,
the libs are doing the exact opposite.
All you need is better pre-K and make your kids play the piano. That'll solve all your problems. Start your kid at piano on 3.
They gotta watch Broad City, when they're teens.
Broad City and shut up. Like, the thing is like, and not actually saying like, okay, number one, the cause of your problems is the bosses and capitalism, basically, and then that secondly, like, okay, you want more of a sense of community and control of your life. We're with that. Here's the positive alternative to that. Not just like, oh, well, who wants that? Losers.
Well, we'll leave it at that, man. That was today's show. Mike, Nando, of course, you guys were fantastic. As always, make sure you guys like, subscribe, rate. And if you can, I know it's a tough time. If you can, become a Patreon of the TMBS show. Become a Patreon of Count the Ding